My name's Carol Hunter, and I'd like to build on some previous thought pieces by exploring if there's a place for digital literacies in a busy curriculum, or if, as some suggest, we should assume that students develop these on their own and carry on as we've always done. JISC, which is the leading UK body on technology in education, have predicted that 90% of new jobs will require excellent digital skills. Yet they also note that many students enter university with relatively limited digital skills when it comes to learning. So it makes sense that improving digital literacy, which they define loosely as the capabilities essential for living, learning and working in a digital society, is an important part of developing not only effective learners, but also employable graduates. But why are these skills becoming so desirable? A lot's got to do with what Martin Weller refers to as radical changes in our notions of abundance and scarcity. Our universities were built on a tradition of students spending considerable amounts of time engaging with a relatively scarce and stable resource, our knowledge experts. Now, while expertise is still relatively rare, what's changed is that access to information associated with that expertise is now abundant, and it's changing rapidly. We're producing 28 billion gigabytes of data every single day and can access expertise through free and open journals, blogs, videos, and digitally curated resources, not to mention discussions taking place in online communities, networks and MOOCs. So our world of abundant time and scarce expertise has been turned on its head. Expertise is everywhere, but it's often drowned out amongst all the noise, and finding the time to engage is a real issue. But it's about more than just keeping up. Managing our digital footprint and online reputation is becoming increasingly important and involves knowing how to participate ethically, legally, safely and respectfully online in a world where issues such as non-attribution, identity theft and trolling are all around us. It's also about knowing how to work effectively in a participatory culture, to harness collective intelligence and personal learning networks to pursue professional and lifelong goals. George Seaman said recently while he was here in Australia that the 21st century is a terrible time to be a control freak. But the idea of control, to me, is what digital literacies is all about. It's about skillfully and critically engaging in digital life so that it works for you, not the other way around. So if we consider just these issues, not to mention the wide range of other issues that I haven't even touched on, then it's easy to agree with Alison Littlejohn that enhancing students' digital literacy should be central to what universities can offer. Some even go further and say it's our responsibility. Weller agrees, arguing that educators need to think carefully about how we can equip learners to make use of this world of abundance. It's this simple question of how which many universities are grappling with at the moment. So as we continue conversations here at CSU on how we might become a leader in online learning, perhaps it's also time to reconsider how we've been thinking about our branding. Do we only see our flower emblem as representative of an open book? Or could it also be representative of how we're equipping students for learning in an open world? This would mean moving beyond just, if I can say just, offering high quality learning experiences, but also thinking about how we might graduate effective online learners who will thrive in and help to shape our digital society in a positive way. CSU is still, I'd argue, in the early stages of taking up this challenge. One of the first hurdles was to be clear on what we're talking about. Well, as far as we can, because defining digital literacies is messy. This is partly because talking about literacy in general is messy. The term's owned by so many different groups, all coming from slightly different perspectives, so getting agreement can be really prickly. But when we start talking digital, it's even harder to pin down, because as I said, digital is constantly changing. While it's not appropriate in a public space to share the full draft criteria developed by CSU's Digital Literacies Working Group, led by Barney Delgado, a word cloud of those same criteria highlights some key concepts in our thinking. If you look beyond the obvious contenders, you'll see words such as critically, effectively, and flexibly emerge, along with cultural, social, multimodal, and implications. Digital literacies is a lot more than learning how to use new tools. It's an interplay between technology, identity, and society. So CSU is moving ahead in this area, and the fact that we have these criteria at all is, to me at least, a real achievement, as it wasn't always an easy path. The University of Bath have taken this one step further by supporting discipline groups to articulate their own set of digital literacy attributes relevant to their professions. Not surprisingly, they found that They've found great diversity in interpretations between disciplines. It would be brilliant to see discipline groups engaging in similar ways here. Digital literacies are personal and they're highly contextualised. What's highly important in one context is less relevant in another. But back to the question about whether there's a place for digital literacies in a busy curriculum. There have been many studies discrediting the digital natives theory, with a lot showing that often students' digital capabilities are quite strong when it comes to social networking and viewing content, but less so when it comes to using these for learning. We've found similar things in our faculty evaluations. Littlejohn and her colleagues also point to emerging evidence that transferring digital capabilities from one context to another, from social life to learning, is more problematic for learners than has been acknowledged. It involves moving from people who like me to those who challenge me, from friends to mentors, from quick facts to deep conversations, from ratings to critiques. So perhaps keeping calm and carrying on isn't the answer to Weller's question of how. But if there's a place for digital literacies in our curriculum, where is it? Can we effectively support students through formal digital literacy lessons in the classroom? Probably not. And even if we could, do we have the knowledge and skills to enable that? Adding another subject to the curriculum is out of the question. These are skills that develop over time, not in a 12-week session. As a starting point, it's beneficial to zone into the kinds of learning experiences offered across the course and ask ourselves if the authentic use of digital technology should be integral to those experiences. How do we scaffold digital capabilities and provide multiple opportunities for students to progressively move from the restricted LMS environment to effectively, safely and skillfully managing their learning and identity in the open world? Have we front-loaded core skills into the first-year experience so that students can build on them independently in later years? And speaking of students, where do they sit in this equation? Are they acting as passive consumers in their learning? Or do we recognise them as active collaborators and co-producers of their learning, as they'll need to be once they leave us? Do we draw on their varying digital capabilities as a resource and build from there? While not everything that's learned needs to be formally taught, Steve Wheeler argues that it's important to provide safe, trusted and supported informal spaces where students can build capabilities, making mistakes without worrying about the impacts on high-stakes assessments, their digital footprint or reputation. What roles might student mentors or ambassadors play in these kind of spaces? And how might they gain credit for such work? Just as a recent Yammer post linked to John Hattie's cry for there need to be more talk about teaching in our tea rooms, I think we also need to be talking more about learning. That means us talking about our own learning, about what we're learning, about effective ways to support the development of digital literacies, and what we're doing to build our own capabilities in this area. But also encouraging conversations amongst our students about how they are using technology to develop a strong academic workflow that better enables their own learning. And, as is true for many conversations, perhaps now is as good a place to start as any. See you on Yammer.